Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spoiler Week. I'm your host, the Spoil Runner. With spoilers. Now, do me a favor. Keep spoilers. I know this sounds weird, but we're not actually going to spoil Infinity War just yet. I always like to have a little bit of a pre-ramble thing, and we're going to keep this spoiler-free here. Don't worry. We'll get into spoilers in a moment. We are currently in No Men, but I will be putting up a nice big indicator once we get into spoiler territory. Yep, Shadow Machine is correct.
Enemy power-up detected.
And apparently there's enemy power-ups. Well, I am, of course, filled with fear. Thank you very, very much, Razulia. 10 months, wow. I don't ask for those subs, but I do appreciate them. Thank you. So I am going to go ahead and mention this really quick here. I'm going to actually be mentioning this next lore week as well. But this is more of a PSA than anything. Did you know that YouTube, subscribing to a YouTube channel, doesn't work the way it used to? I wouldn't be surprised if most of you do know this, but at the same time, it's not something they've really publicized. See, if you subscribe to a YouTube channel, they'll put it in your feed and occasionally send you updates about it. If you hit the bell icon, then you actually get notifications for new videos. So, FYI. I'm not sure why they did that, but whatever. I've been meaning to talk about that for several lore weeks. I've just kind of forgotten. I just realized I'm still on my sad playlist. Let's switch to something a little more generic. Here we go. How many of you guys like anime? Apparently, pancakes love Nutella. Shadow Machine told me last Monday. Yes, I know that, preacher. It's still bullcrap, and I bet you there's still people who don't know it. Nutella is something I've never had before. So anyways, they're making a Star Wars anime. No, not the manga. Not the old one. It's being made by some of the creative team that worked on... This is really weird to open. Clone Wars and Rebels. Do I not have a spoon? Where are all my spoons? I have no spoon. Ah! Guys, there's no spoon. It's called Resistance. Wow. That is way too chocolatey for me. For those of you not aware, chocolate usually destroys my throat. I'm going to decline to have more of that. Yeah, Star Wars Resistance is going to be an anime. And, So, one of the things that we have theorized before is when exactly are they going to have the next Star Wars show. We've known they were working on a new live-action show and a new animated show, and we didn't know specific details about when and where and how and what for. Resistance was announced just last week and is being set in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. It is designed to be a lead-up to Force Awakens and to help bridge the gap. Which makes a degree of sense. Rebels was in between the previous trilogy, so the previous two trilogy gaps, so that makes a degree of sense. I guess I'm not sure what else to say about it. I will probably not watch it. I don't like anime art style, to be completely blunt. It's just not my thing. So, from a purely aesthetic perspective, I'm already kind of against it. Now, one thing I do find interesting is they are actually bringing in several of the actors who play their roles in the movies to play their roles in the show. Now, if you don't quite understand why that's kind of a big deal, that's expensive. And there's usually contracts getting in the way of that kind of a thing. So that's actually really surprising. There's a reason why it was such a big deal, why Star Trek the Animated Series had the original cast playing for it, and why that series had so many budget issues. It's because the overwhelming amount of budget in Star Trek the Animated Series went to the cast. So, yeah. But yeah, of course, this is Disney money. But the relevant point is that Disney is actually putting money behind this, which I do find to be an interesting idea. They seem to be kind of going all in on this one. That's very true, Zoan. That is very true. So, oh, by the way, hello, Critic Source. Sorry I didn't say hi earlier. Or Crit Source, excuse me. I was getting ready for everything. Welcome to my stream. Anyways. The other thing I wanted to mention was that we also got some news from Paramount this week. They're doing a Top Gun sequel. I don't know what to make of that. They're doing a Top Gun sequel. I mean, I liked Top Gun, I think. I haven't watched it in like 20 years. So, I feel like I liked Top Gun. I do feel like this is just a continuing trend, though. Like, this is nothing new, per se. There really has been an extensive trend of, what's an old topic? Oh, let's make a new movie out of it. Dun-dun-dun-dun. They're also making the Transformers spin-offs. This is also kind of old news. I can't even imagine that there's enough money to justify that, but whatever. Yes, I have, Anthony. They're also making 2 new Star Trek films. Now, that one's the actual announcement. At least to my knowledge, because we already knew about the Top Gun thing, we already knew about the Transformers spin-offs. But they actually are already working on 2 new Star Trek films as of now. They're already in pre-production. I really don't know what I think about that. On the one hand, cool. Like, you know, more Star Trek can be a good thing, right? On the other hand, for those of you not aware, Star Trek is kind of... Jesus Christ. Star Trek is kind of Jesus Christ. Star Trek... Thank you, Shadow Machine. Ooh, let me jot that down really quick. I'll put it right here. And thank you, Shadow Machine. Thank you very much. Come on. There we go. We kind of have Maverick. Although the only one that really pulls up a question mark for me is Wei-Yun. Anyways, Star Trek is part and parceled, like all over the place. The rights for Star Trek are weird, and bits and pieces of the ownership of Star Trek are all over the place. And it's not even as simple as something basic like they own the television rights, because even television rights actually include several different aspects of rights. There's a reason Discovery had to redesign the Enterprise for Star Trek. There's a reason, there's a reason the show Discovery had to redesign the ship Enterprise, and that's because of rights issues. So again, it's chopped up all over the place. So what I'm saying by this is Paramount pretty much can only do movies, at least as of the moment, set within either an alternate verse or rebooting, you know, basically making another verse. And that's it, which I'm not sure what I think about. I have had no time, Nevermore, so I've never really sat down and looked into it, no, basically. Most of my time I spend researching something. I spend researching something for the show. I know, right, Ethel? And SJ? God damn. Why are the rights all over the place? Legality? Basically, the rights for Star Trek have kind of always been all over the place. Because when Star Trek was originally funded, it was in a period of time in which television was a completely different concept. And I mean at a fundamental level. You know, Star Trek in the 60s was television in the 60s. I'm not going to go into the specifics because, again, it's a very complex situation, really. There's a reason why Doctor Who has had so many issues over the years as well. So those original rights to Star Trek were also part and parcel a little bit, basically into about 3.5 chunks, roughly. And then when Star Trek was pushed forward in the animated series, there was a few things that went over here. And yeah, syndication was a big issue back in the day. Then motion picture and TNG, it was more like motion picture 2, 3, and then TNG started happening. And so once again, things kind of got rearranged because at that point, it was less about the rights to Star Trek and more about the rights to this specific character or this specific concept and so forth and so on. And that never stopped. And then Roddenberry died. Now, forgive me, but that threw a hell of a wrench into the rights issues because Roddenberry didn't have a particularly clear-cut line of succession, so to speak, for where the rights went after he died, so that led to another legal battle. That one took years to resolve, by the way. It also doesn't help that Roddenberry's first wife also held on to a lot of those rights, and point being, it was started off as just another show. Nobody ever planned for Star Trek to be a multi-decade franchise. And so, as the show developed and progressed, nobody had a plan in mind. How many of you live in a city where the roads and streets just kind of go all over the place in a way that doesn't really make sense? The reason that is that way is because when they built that city and when they laid down those original roads, they weren't planning for it to be big. They didn't have this distinct plan in mind. They just had the thing, and then they... That startled me a little bit. I'm going to finish my analogy really quick here, and then I'm going to see what the hell Zoan just did. Roads, and then chunk, and then chunk, and then chunk, and then chunk, and then chunk. And it's because they didn't plan it out. They just kind of built onto it, and built onto it, and built onto it, and what you have is a mess. That right there, that's Star Trek legality. That's the rights issues. And again, I'm not going into details because... details would involve looking up a bunch of legal firms and the specific suits that happened over the last 40 years and so forth and so on. Well, we don't have a topic yet, Zoan. We're just kind of rambling. We're just kind of building up to the Infinity War spoilers. But thank you very much, Zoan. I will put that here. Like that. One Joker. There. Okay. And thank you again. Very, very much. So anyways, yeah. I guess I'm actually kind of done. Point being, because of rights issues and because of this, there's a really good chance that any new Star Trek films will either be a new reboot, whether an in-universe reboot or out, or we'll continue on with the Abramsverse. The Kelvin timeline. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and throw up the spoiler background, which is one of these images. Where's the spoiler image? There it is. Boop. Nice and obvious. We are officially entering spoiler territory. I'm going to give it like another minute before I start spoiling anything. Give people a chance to kind of filter out or mute. Give people who are watching this on YouTube or whatever a chance to mute or pause or whatever. Just letting everyone have a transitionary phase here. I will say, before I even get into spoilers, by sheer, will and grit, I actually managed to not be spoiled walking into this film. I had to kind of start avoiding the internet to do that, because it got to the point... I'll send out a tweet, Anthony. How's that sound? It got to the point where, people were just posting videos and posts that said, spoiler, 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 what does this mean? And stuff like that, which was just ridiculous. But I want to share a quick story, if you don't mind. So, we showed up, what do you mean, Ethel? Oh, you're talking about the phone game. Screw that crap. We got there pretty early, about an hour early. And me and my sis and third and sis's husband were literally the first people in line. And we're like, okay, we're good. And we had other people showing up. We're all chatting and talking, and we were weirded out because they wouldn't let us go in. The reason we showed up an hour early was so we could get the good seats. I mean, I think I've told this story. When we saw Black Panther, I saw the movie like this, and my neck hurt for about 3 days after that because, So we wanted to make sure we got good seats. It's like, woo! And But they wouldn't let us in, and we were really weirded out by the fact they wouldn't let us in. And we're just standing there and waiting, and finally the previous people left the theater, because apparently they had started staggering these such a way so that there was about a 20-minute gap in between showings, which is actually kind of unusual for those of you who don't know how theaters run things here in the States. 20-minute gap, it usually is closer to like an hour or even an hour and a half gap in between showings. So they were really cramming them in there. Makes sense in hindsight. So here's the funny part. I had made it to that moment without spoilers. And the people leaving the theater were discussing the movie. Now, I like to think I'm an observant fellow. I noticed this immediately. And I'm like, ugh! And I like, third, sis. And I literally, quite physically, literally cover my ears. And the two of them do it as well. And then, so there's like a line behind us, right? Of people waiting to get in. And they all start doing the same thing. So we've got like 15, 20, 30, I don't actually know how many. Quite a few people are like, ugh! And the people coming out of the video get the most embarrassed looks on their faces. Like, oh, shut up, And they shut up. I thought that was kind of actually a neat little moment. Because, I don't know. I like to think of that people are better than they are not. And I like to think that those people were not deliberately trying to spoil anything. They were just enthusing about the film, right? Yeah. No reserved seating for this place. We were actually going to go to the reserved seating place with the really nice, comfy places, but they were only selling 3D tickets. And I don't think there's anything in the world, without going into extremes, that would convince me to see a movie in 3D. I don't feel like headaching the rest of my day. Yeah, I have a tendency to pre-order what, Puzzle Fury? Always canceling headphones. Oh God, DeGaulle, that's horrible. We're recording, yep, okay, so I think that's enough of a transitionary period. Actually, can I say one more thing? Give it just a little bit of additional transitionary period here. The ads. I was talking about this in Discord. I was actually in Discord while I was sitting in the theater waiting for it to start. The ads leading up to it were so obviously designed for a geek audience. It's like, here's an Xbox game. Here's a Nintendo game. Here's like a jousting thing. I don't remember all of them right now, but it was like, here's one of them. I remember this one. This one was actually kind of amusing. There's this one bit when this one guy was like, I told you needed to get a 9-to-5 job. I told you needed to just put down and muscle in and get some good work done. And I was wrong, and you made it work. And it was like this super hipster trendy thing. Like, you can go out and you don't have to work a 9-to-5, which of course is, again, aimed towards geek culture. We had a State Farm ad that was about LARPing. It was all geek-oriented lab. The other thing that was actually kind of neat, let me look up the name for this. Apparently this is a brand new thing. I didn't know this. So they had AR games in the theater, where you hold up your phone and you actually shoot stuff that's being played on the screen. Which is kind of a neat idea. I'm not sure what I think about that yet. But, you know, it was just kind of like, okay, that's kind of cool. I like it. Give me a second. As something to do rather than the pre-roll. And it was from Noovie Arcade. Noovie Arcade, A-R-Cade. And apparently it is brand new. And again, apparently I was one of the very first people to play this. I actually got a tweet from the company talking about this. And I have to admit, I kind of like that rather than the usual pre-roll stuff they do. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like, they usually do the lead up before they even get to the previews. And it's just a lot of crap that, you know, is just kind of, hey, or sometimes you'll get some behind-the-scenes stuff for a television show, and that's about it. I like that, you know, using this AR thing as a way to engage the audience and keep them there, better than just, and here's something you don't care about, you know, like the generic ad thing that Zero Hunter's just mentioning. So again, apparently this is brand new. I don't know if this is going to take off or not. but it's very strange. Ever since I became a partner, is the one. So, weird. Yes, I actually had that ad, Tara. That ad was at my one, too. Then we got to the actual previews. What do we have for previews? It was a bunch of weird ones. Like, some of them made sense. Deadpool was there, you know. And then there was one for a movie called Unbroken... Oh, I don't remember the subtitle. Unbroken something, something, something. And it was like, okay. I'm not sure why you're showing that preview today. Anyways. I think we've given people plenty of time to stream out. We've given them like 5-6 minutes here. Can I admit, and you're going to make fun of me for this, can I admit that I'm still kind of emotionally recovering from this film? Like, all joking, all pretense gone. I left that film feeling vaguely sick. It was weirdly impacting in a very hard to explain way. Holy God. I mean, I'm still kind of just... yeah. My sister was angry. Like, because she had the same reaction I did, basically. She was just angry that they were doing this and they were going this direction. Oh, yeah. Same here, Aiden. When the credits finally rolled, the audience was dead quiet. We can also say really quick here, we had a wonderful audience. It was one of the best audiences I've had in a film, like, ever. Wonderfully reactive. Everyone was right there with us. There were scenes where we just broke out into applause. Laughter was nice and natural. It was great. No, not screaming angry, just upset angry, tears angry. I have so much to talk about, I don't know where to start. I'm going to start with the analyst in me. Is that cool? Because I'm hard-pressed to think of a film that is as properly paced as this film is. The pacing, the cadence of events, the sequence of how things went throughout it were poetry. Going straight from... I mean, it started dark and quiet with a distress signal in the background. And then it got, you know, and it would do this thing where there's some heaviness, and then it goes back down, then it was heaviness, then it goes back down, and then it would go even further down. Yeah, exactly. I was never bored. In fact, I actually cannot remember the last film I have quite literally been sitting upright and on the edge of my seat for like an hour. Like the entire last hour, I was just... And the funny thing is, I know I was not alone. I was looking... Third was right here with me. He was leaning forward on his knees like, oh my God. And Sis was just clinging. She was clinging to her husband like death grip on his arm. And the whole audience was just... Holy God. And yeah, I want to talk about Empire Strikes Back. Thank you for reminding me of that, Revan. Some people don't remember this. I actually don't remember if I pointed it out during my own rumination.
Enemy power-up detected.
But Pico is here and is subbing and is filling us with fear. Thank you very, very much, Pico. I'm very grateful. Yeah, the movie was filled with fear. Empire Strikes Back had humor in it. In fact, arguably, Empire Strikes Back had the most humorous moments of the Star Wars movies in general, but most especially of the original trilogy. And a lot of people don't tend to remember that. If you ask people what's Empire Strikes Back, people usually say it's the middle part, it's the character part, it's the dark one, right? But what they did was they pulled out moments of levity. It's not necessarily jokes, just moments of to make the audience unconsciously unwind a little bit. If you just make your audience super tense the whole time, that's not good. That will eventually get to the point where the audience just starts to grind on them. To use a weird parallel, Modern Warfare 3 didn't do that. Now, Modern Warfare 3 was specifically a game and didn't really have humor, but my point is Modern Warfare 3 was just... And it got to the point where it started getting headachy, right? I've seen films that try to be all dark, and they just get to you after a while. It needs those moments. This goes back to what I was talking about with the pacing. It needs those moments to give you a moment to, get a breath, recover a second. Oh, I believe you, preacher. You didn't like Avengers 1? What didn't you like about Avengers 1? Yeah, exactly. Grip and release. That was very powerful. And yeah, I agree. Humor and darkness are things that should go together. I know that sounds weird, but cinematic history will prove me right on this over and over and over. But you have to do it very carefully. I think this film did a good job of that. There were a lot of very genuine laughing sections in that film where the whole audience, me included, was just a lot of specific moments where I really enjoyed it. And, lol, Lexia. Before I go into specific things, I want to say one other thing about the overall structure of the film. He's like a pirate angel. I can't remember any other crossover thing ever that has so seamlessly woven its characters in together like this one. And I'm curious what you guys think of this part, because the logical construction of events was smooth as butter. He's here, so he walks over here, and he just kind of happens to walk over to here. This person ends up here, and then that group basically groups up and goes off in their given direction. There were like 4 or 5 plot threads going through this. And I loved how it was like, at first glance, you might think, why would you pair up these characters? But on second thought, I'm looking at this like, this feels very Tetris-y, right? Like a lot of characters who don't really fit to each other, I'm saying this wrong, who don't look like they would get along, but nevertheless fit each other in terms of personality and powers. Yeah, great. They basically chemistryed out everyone. Everyone had great chemistry. And yeah, no weird jumps in logic for it. I loved it. And yeah, every character in just about every situation had something meaningful or purposeful to do. Even Peter Dinklage, although I've heard a lot of people complain about him. Yeah, exactly, Leander. Very recently, Max Time linked me something in Discord about a guy who was like, this film's stupid. Why should I have to go watch 18 films to get to this? To which I say, you're a moron. Random guy who I don't even know your name, I don't care about. That guy's an idiot for saying that. Oh yeah, Thor and Rocket were actually great together. Like, that's not something I would have predicted. But they were. It's the biggest dwarf I've ever seen, yeah. I am glad that they didn't pull a Mass Effect 3. To explain that a little bit, Mass Effect 3, in my opinion, one of the larger problems it had, of like the 4 major problems Mass Effect 3 had, was it tried a little bit too hard to include people who hadn't played Mass Effect 1 and 2. Now, there's a lot that can be argued for and against that mentality. There's a lot that can be said about that. And let's be clear, it's not a definitive good-bad scenario. It's about preferences, opinions, and basically dice rolls. But in my opinion, if you have a long-standing franchise, I'm saying that wrong. If you have a long-standing continuity build-up and you do a conclusion work, you should not make that conclusion work for people who are new to the franchise. That's my opinion. This movie was not for people who have not been following the MCU, and I'm glad of that, because it took that and used that as a strength. A lot of the characters were already established. A lot of their personalities, a lot of their dynamics, a lot of the growth was already established. A lot of the comments and things, like how many times both Hulk and Thor were like, wait, what? What was it? What was the joke? I think it was Quill was asking Thor if someone was in the Avengers, and Thor's like, I don't know. I haven't been back in a little bit. I can't remember who it was. It was just some random character. I don't remember who it was. But yeah, I like that they did that here. Kevin Bacon. That was it. Kevin Bacon. I don't know if he's part of the Avengers or not. I've been out for a while. Also, is it just me, or is Ross an asshole? Did that bother anyone else? Like, Ross has never been a good guy. He's only been in the movies, like, what, 3 times? I think he's technically been in the show once. But each time, he has just been a horrible person. The idea of Ross in a critical planetary level crisis situation is like, arrest these men for trying to save the world. What? That's like him basically kicking it up another notch. I was expecting him to be like, all right, whatever. We'll deal with the fallout when we're done with this. Not arrest these men. What? Oh my god. That just bothered me. Do you need to see? That's a tough one, Aethel. Age of Ultron, Civil War. I got something to say about that too, by the way. Age of Ultron, Civil War, Thor 3, Guardians of the Galaxy 2. That might be it for absolutely mandatory films, Aethel. And even then, that's debatable. But that's true, Preacher. Although they also referenced that in Thor 3 a little bit. But, yeah. Oh, yeah, Doctor Strange. I mean, you don't really need to see Doctor Strange. Arguably, you don't really need to see any of them. You're just going to miss pieces. I was debating Black Panther because they make it very clear what's going on with Wakanda in the film. And Panther himself... I noticed, Deacon. I noticed. Panther himself was mostly the king rather than the panther in this film, so... God, okay. One of the things I found interesting about the earlier parts of the film is that we weren't fighting Thanos. Like, did you guys notice that? We were fighting Thanos' minions. I also hope you noticed that all 3 of the major children of Thanos died in this film. Oh, absolutely Thanos is the main character, without question. I mean, that's not even a debatable. Even the credits agreed with me on that one. Thanos will return next year. Yeah, the Black Order, thank you. I thought they did a good job with them. 4 minions. There was Big Guy. Oh, you're right. There was 4. There was Spear Guy, Big Guy, Lady Guy, and Telekinesis Guy, who was... He was actually pretty cool. I'll be honest. Telekinesis Guy was... Whew. There we go. I actually kind of forgot about Spear Guy because he didn't do much, really. Yeah, they all felt very dangerous. They all felt very powerful. They felt like... One of the comments I made, for me about a month ago, but for you guys about 2 days ago, was that Avengers 1 was very small scale. That it was a very low-key difficulty phrase. Right? You know what I mean, though, right? The Chitauri and Loki were very low tier. And I thought that was a good thing. I thought that was an excellent way to start off the Avengers and the MCU in general. This movie is like the exact opposite of that. I'm not sure it's actually physically possible to be higher tier for the MCU than what we just had. And I mention that as well because that's the other thing I like about the usage of the Order. they were mid-tier, but that meant they were a good challenge. Like the challenge rating level, to use D&D terms, for them to the event, to the MCU in general, was about average, was about even. Yeah, no kidding, Blue Wolf Alex. They, and I felt like they were a good way to keep the heroes engaged and involved, and also kind of, I would personally say Galactus is lower tier than this, but that's just me. Also, Galactus doesn't exist in the MCU yet. And yeah, you're right. Darkstar is correct. Each of the Black Order we had the big guy, we had the precision guy, or no, I'm sorry, we had the big guy, we had the reach guy, we had the mage guy, and we had the rogue, basically. And yeah, exactly, Saldir. When they were fighting just Strange and Stark and no one else, they were having issues. Once they were fighting, like Vision and Panther and Cap and like 5 other people, they got crushed. Well, Galactus doesn't exist yet in the MCU, so that's the first problem. Second of all, Thanos in the comics is nowhere near the tier of threat that he has been here in this movie, in my opinion. That is just my opinion. Although I suppose that brings up the next thing, the reinterpretation of Thanos. Now, I know that I am a horrible person who everyone hates in the world, but I don't mind if you interpret or change a work as long as you do something good with it. I really like what they did with Thanos in this film, my opinion. I'm hesitating to talk about him because he is arguably the main character of the film. Even the writers, even the directors all said, no, this is Thanos' film. He is probably one of the most archetypal examples of a tier 2 villain, or type 2 villain, excuse me, I've ever seen in my life. This is crazy. Oh no, he's a total moron in the comics. And what's funny, what I love about this is if you sit back and think about it, what is Thanos' kit? He's damn strong, and he's incredibly durable. And that's it. That is actually all he's got going for him, at least as far as his personal kit. Yeah, he's a super tank. I like that, Count. He's a super tank. He was able to go toe-to-toe with the Hulk and win. Granted, the MCU's Hulk is lower tier than the comics Hulk, but Hulk has still been one of the strongest people in the MCU consistently. But I guess I like that because Thanos was such a threat, not because he was the Phoenix, right? Not because he was someone who could eat stars. It's because he was someone who had built an army, who had amassed this thing, who had forced the glove, who was using the glove. You know, he literally was a tool user. And I think that makes sense to me. I mean, what is Stark if not a tool user, to use a parallel? It absolutely does, if and but. That is a definite example of Worf effect. And yeah, Thanos scared the Hulk. Thanos scared the Hulk. And again, just plonk and beating him in a straight-up fist fight. He only had 1 stone at that point. Now, that intro sequence got to me. I'll admit that. Yeah, exactly, Lexia. Let's go ahead and discuss what I've heard many people say, which is arguably one of the bigger negatives of the film. And that's that Thor takes way too damn long to start actually unleashing. I don't have a good answer for that. You know, I don't have a hand wave. I'm not going to try and justify it. It's probably the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head that bothered me about the film. By the end of the film, Thor was where he should be. When Thor showed up in the invasion at Wakanda, that was Thor. And admittedly, Thor wasn't really fighting anyone up to that point. So it makes sense he wouldn't go full tilt in between. But for some strange reason, Thor just kind of did nothing in the beginning of the film. That being said, I just realized I'm gonna lie here, or I have lied. I'm changing my mind basically. I like to. Thor, Loki, and Hulk were going up against Thanos and telekinesis guy, and I think spear guy was there. In fact, all of the Black Order was there, weren't they? Yes. Oh, absolutely, Darkstar. There was applause. Um, so now that I'm actually thinking about it out loud, I take it back. I like to think that Thor unleashed before the camera started rolling and lost. Because he was going up against the entire Black Order plus Thanos. And remember, they didn't really, like, based on the construction events, they probably didn't actually see Hulk. So Hulk probably wasn't actually involved in that fight, for whatever reason. So that makes it Loki and Thor versus the Four and Thanos. So that, now that I'm actually thinking about it, that actually makes a little bit more sense. Because there was no reason for him to unleash anywhere in between. And obviously at the end, he did unleash. I mean, he basically beat Thanos. The one guy to beat Thanos, with the glove, I might add, was Thor going full tilt with the Stormbreaker. And yeah, that would make sense for why he would want to go make the axe. Because he already unleashed, it didn't work, I need more. So that does make a degree of sense now that I'm talking it out here. I really hope Valkyrie lived. I really hope Valkyrie lived. I loved her in Thor 3. I really hope Korg lived. I loved him in Thor 3. Fingers crossed. They do make a comment very deliberately that half of my people are dead. You remember Thor saying that? And that is basically Thanos' modus operandi. In fact, if you pay attention, several times Thanos has the option of killing everyone and doesn't. Several times Thanos has the choice to say, screw you all, and doesn't. So I don't actually think he would have just abstractly massacred people. My opinion. Well, Meek's dead. Valkyrie's dead. I'm dead. That's a shocker. Oh well, we tried. No, spoil away, Luxia. We've got the thing up. Is Thanos really a villain? Yes. Is he a complex villain? Yes. I'm sure you all noticed it because it's so obvious it's a little bit ridiculous, but the amount of emphasis on the theme of the film was heavy, for lack of a better way to put it. The theme being having the will to do what is necessary. There's a lot of little examples of that. Groot forming the handle, which, by the way, our whole audience cheered when that happened. Being willing to take the sun, all that kind of stuff. That sort of thing was all over the place. And, of course, in the far more large scale, having the will to do what is necessary. Wanda being willing to kill Vision, for example. No, absolutely not, SJ. No. And, of course, Thanos himself. One of the scenes that really struck me was when Thanos, almost gently reaches out to Wanda like, I'm sorry. Yeah, Peter being willing to kill Gamora. That's another one. I understand what you're going through. You get this consistent feeling throughout the whole film that Thanos hates having to do this. It created a feeling in me that while Thanos is a villain, let's not ignore that. This is a person who tortures and kills and is trying to extinguish half of life in the galaxy. But for me, it felt kind of like Final Fantasy X. Hear me out. In Final Fantasy X, while there were evil individuals, there really wasn't a singular villain in FF10. There wasn't some guy going, The system was the villain of FF10. The circumstances were the villain of FF10. And I very much got that impression in this film. That the nature of the universe, that the consequence of life expenditure, of overpopulation, of the extinguishment of resources was the villain. of the film. And Thanos hated it. And Thanos was willing to do whatever was necessary because he believed he was right. Just like all the heroes were willing to do what was necessary to believe what was right, or because they believed that they were right, you know? Yeah, exactly, SJ. Yeah. How many films, how many works of fiction do you know where the villain wins and he's just tired and worn out and grief-stricken? Now, two people in chat have asked a very valid question. Okay, he has the Infinity Gauntlet. Why didn't he use it to change the system? Now, there is an answer for that in the film, but I suppose a better question is, why didn't he make the Infinity Gauntlet to do something different? This is why I still say that Thanos is in fact a villain, despite everything. Because he is still willing to do evil, because he is still focused on this evil task, that he believes it is the only solution. He believes that trying to abundance resources or change the system isn't going to work. Now, whether he's right or not is not relevant. But remember, the way it's presented in the film, the gauntlet really only serves one function. Utilize the stones to make this happen. It could be argued very strongly that the gauntlet cannot really do anything else. In fact, I'm sure you guys noticed this. Once he does the... Let's try that again. Once he does the gauntlet is charred and cracked and impacted, and his entire arm is bruised and ashen. Because that was its purpose. It did its one thing. It's actually, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Infinity Gauntlet literally doesn't work anymore. Because it was designed to do this one thing. This still goes on Thanos. I want to make that clear. This still makes this Thanos' fault. Because he wanted a gauntlet to do this. And he did. So, yeah. The Mad Titan. I mean, you're right, Revan. Gamora flat out calls him insane for his mentality. And the funny thing is, Thanos just replies, and what's going on your home planet right now? That's true. He did still use the spatial stone. You are correct on that, Darkstar. So, the torture of Nebula. Oh, that hurt. What bothered me most, by the way, as weird as this is going to sound, is that Thanos' solution will just have to be repeated later. Think about it. Now, I want to talk about some of the middle stuff of the film, but can I just talk about the thing that really hit me the hardest about this film? So, you know, Loki dies. Ugh, God damn. You are not a god. Loki dies. Heimdall dies. Ugh, that one hurt. I've always been a pretty big fan of Heimdall. I know, right, Blaine? God, who else? Gamora. Gamora is sacrificed. We'll talk about that later. You know, death. And then it gets to the end, and then he snaps. The way that they all died was one of the most beautiful ways I've ever seen death represented in fiction. Now, I want to explain this a little bit. Because death is something that's hard to present in a fictional work. I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. Most of the times, people don't actually know how to represent death. I bet you've seen a dozen times a game or a book or a movie or a show where Bob dies and Bobina's like, no! That's not how you represent death. That's cheap and stupid. Nobody cares about that. I shouldn't say nobody, but you know what I mean, right? That is a cheap way to represent death. But the most common go-to for showing death as ugly and as horrible as it really is in real life is by being just as ugly, usually leaning heavily on the gore button, trying to show someone as they're struggling and just what's that? There's a recent Quentin Tarantino film about a bunch of people who meet in an inn, like the Five Bastards or whatever. God, what's the name of that film? Anyways, that film did actually a reasonably good job of showing how ugly death can be when they finally, the Hateful Eight, when they finally hang her. You remember that scene? The Hateful Eight. That's kind of what I'm talking about. You show something just kind of brutal and unpleasant, the kind of thing that you legitimately do not want to see because it is just that horrible. That's usually what people will do to show how bad death can be. This film, everyone died with a whisper. It was so quiet. There was no screaming. There wasn't even any tears. People didn't even have time to react. There's just this quiet little, like, I'm sure you noticed it. The sound effect was like someone exhaling. Just, yeah, seemingly painless. Most of the people who died didn't even have a chance to react to it. Most of them just... By the way, I can't help but notice that one of the few people who legitimately reacted to it was the guy with Spidey sense. And I know that sounds like a weird thing to point out, but think about it for a second. Of course he knows it's coming. Of all people, Spider-Man would know that's coming. Mine too, Darkstar. I'll be blunt, I was sobbing. I was sobbing. As they just kind of... Oh, Strange knew. There's no way Strange did not know. Yeah, Bucky, just... I can't remember if he says Steve. I think he says Steve. He's like, Steve? Gone. And yeah, Peter... I feel much worse for Stark than anyone else. Stark has a line in this film. Thanos has been in my head for 6 years. And he has. Stark has had an extensive, lengthy, multi-step, multi-arc journey throughout the MCU. He is arguably the central character of the MCU. I don't think anyone can really deny or argue that. The only other competitor for that is Rogers. And Stark being forced to live through that, especially since Stark finally had reached out and finally took a kid under his wing and was legitimately trying to be a surrogate father to him. And yeah, he was planning to be a father. We don't know what's happened to Potts. There are several MIAs in this one. We're not sure what's going on with Hawkeye or his family. We're not sure what's going on with Ant-Man or Wasp or Pym. And we're not sure what's going on with Potts, but there's several others. And yeah, Tony saw the worst thing that could happen to him come true. And now he's stuck on Titan with Nebula, who lived. And I want to add the other reason this film really hit me. Because I thought Tony was going to die. I think it's far worse that he didn't. This is how you hurt someone in fiction, by the way. That's true. They still have a ship, so they should be able to get off that planet. It's just... That's not true, Blue Wolf Alex. And I want to talk about that later. Yeah, the only Guardian who lived was Rocket. I'll talk about that later. Don't worry, I'm building up to a point. The other reason this really got to me was because the futility of it smashed me in the face. It's hard to properly vocalize this, but there's this buildup, and there's this buildup of the heroes doing more than they usually would, and trying harder than they usually would, sacrificing more than they usually would, and it culminates in a scene where Stark is solo fighting Thanos, and he gets a drop of blood. All that for a drop of blood. That's Stark using his own tech, probably augmented with some Wakanda tech based on what we learn, with all of his skill and knowledge and will, and all he's able to do is this. And as weird as I'm with you, Darkstar, I'm proud of Stark. Of all people to pull that off, Stark should be the one. Should be. I mean, Thor is stronger than Thanos. I think we could all agree with that, especially with the Stormbreaker. Thor does beat Thanos. But of all the people to pull off that feat, in my opinion, that should have been Stark. I did notice that. I didn't actually know that walking into this, by the way. For those of you not aware, Ant-Man and Wasp and Captain Marvel both occur before Infinity War. I would be astonished if Ant-Man and Wasp does not end with the consequences of... Yeah. I agree. Thanos never felt OP to me. You'll notice, by the way, I mentioned the tool user thing. This had very significant rules. Like, did you catch that? He had to specifically clench his hand fully in order to activate it. And, unless I missed it, he could only activate one gem at a time until he did the final snap. He had to switch. He'd have like, blue, red, okay, blue again, now purple, So they basically made rules to the Infinity Gauntlet, which brought Thanos down, which I was really down with. One of my worries leading up to this was that the Infinity Gauntlet, as it could be interpreted, doesn't have those limitations on that. And without those limitations, it's just like, okay, now there's no anything. You just can't do anything to him. So, and yeah, the scene where they almost got the glove off, that hurt. I can't believe... They actually almost beat Thanos like 3 times in this film. I'm sure you caught that. Quill... I don't blame Quill. But at the same time... God damn it, Quill. God damn it. But yes, Thanos... Oh. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. I've talked so many times about in the moment. In the moment, your brain is not working. This is actually not just assumption or fictional. When you have certain chemicals going through your brain, I can't remember what they're called right now, please forgive me, but like when you lose your temper, when you start shrilling and screaming, your brain is quite literally not working properly. That is an actual fundamental chemical truth of human beings, right? Yeah, basically the emotion rules out the rationality. It's a specific chemical. I forget what it is. Specific hormone. But yeah, it's just... So to me, it really does make perfect sense that Quill, in that moment, was not thinking. Yeah, rage makes us stupid. Rage makes us very stupid. I'm sure most of you know that as well as I do. I've said and done some things that I didn't mean at all. That I didn't think at all. Because I was... I hate that. I've spent most of my life trying to never lose my temper because of that crap. I don't like being out of control. And yeah, Quill has already lost his mother. had already lost his father, or excuse me, his daddy. And now he lost Gamora, who had finally admitted that she loved him. Yeah, no kidding, Darkstar. Good morning, Starscream. Yeah, when I was a kid, I had a bit of a temper. I hated it. I hated it. I worked like my entire up to high school life trying to control my temper because I hate that crap. Let's go ahead and talk about Red Skull really quick, just because a bunch of people are talking about it. There were only two things in the entire film that really surprised me. Now, I'm not saying that like, oh, hang on, where's my monocle? I totally saw everything coming, yes, I predicted it all. No. The point being that I kind of saw the pace of the film, but only two things came completely out of left field and sideswiped me. One of those was the Red Skull. Now, for those of you not aware, that's not Hugo Weaving. Let's just make that clear. I actually looked this up almost immediately. It's like that wasn't Hugo Weaving. Some other guy, I don't remember his name. And Hugo Weaving flat out said he had no interest in ever being the Skull again. When they originally wrote Captain America, the script was designed such that Red Skull would come back. Then there were issues. Yeah, thank you, Richard Marquand. There were issues involved behind the scenes. Hugo Weaving flat out refused to do it, and most of the writers basically abandoned it. Now, so from a real-life perspective... oh, I saw that too, Revan. I noticed. Thanos does a lot of visual storytelling in his body language throughout the whole film. But anyways, so the idea of Red Skull coming back was astonishing to me. I legitimately gave a very audible... in film, because it just shocked me so much to actually see the Skull back. I was like, what? Holy God! What? And Sis is like, who's that? Who's that? And yeah, that's true. All the Infinity Stones went through human hands. And yeah, the fact that that fate makes a weird amount of sense for Skull. Like... I want it all. It also gives him retroactively some motivation for back in Captain America. If you guys watched my rumination or have seen the film, you know, one of my bigger complaints was that Red Skull didn't really have a goal in mind. There was no, like, motivation. He was just evil moving on. This film retroactively gives him a motivation to get all the Infinity Stones. And he failed. And he had to watch over Soul. For the record, I don't think he should ever return. I think Skull should stay there, my opinion. That was a good way to bring him back, a good time to bring him back, and he has now basically fulfilled his purpose. I don't think he should be coming back. Oh no, I said something when he pulled the moon, Darkstar, and what I said was, oh God. But I can't replicate how I said it, because in the moment, I was reacting as if someone had physically grabbed the moon in real life and started pulling it towards us. What I'm trying to say is I said it rather genuinely, just, you know, I can't emulate it. Now, so Red Skull's presentation in this, with it completely, that whole scene, oh my God. Of the various characters who have died in this film, oh, absolutely. Uchiha Daisuke? Absolutely. I absolutely think Doctor Strange foresaw that. I mean, I could, Blue Elf, but whatever. The other surprise was... That shocked me. Especially since everything up to the snap was exactly what I was expecting. We made the final sacrifice. Wanda killed Vision. He undid it. He's finally ready to go. Thor comes in with the Stormbreaker, which had been built up for basically the entire film. and manages to kill Thanos. And I figured that was it. That was going to be the end. We were still going to have Gamora dead. We were still going to have them stuck on a planet, on Titan. There was still going to be a lot of damage from this, but we won. And then you should have aimed for the head. Yeah, that surprised me. Because I know this is going to sound weird, but how do you beat Q? Ever since I was a child, when TNG first started coming out, I have thought many times, how do you beat Q? Now the answer is you don't, because you can't. Because it doesn't... Most battles are battles of strength and skill, but this is neither. This is not strength or skill. This is altering reality on a fundamental level. You can't beat Q. It's not fundamentally possible. Voyager, go and get the Voyager jokes out of your system. You know what I mean, though. I know a lot of you know what I mean. So, the moment he snapped, I was actually thinking about Q. Because if Q ever really wanted to beat them, if Q ever really wanted to wipe out half of the people in the galaxy, he could, and he would, and there's nothing you could do about it. Yeah, it's a whole other level. It's a whole other tier. You can't even begin to comprehend how to start doing that. And so the moment Thanos... I couldn't breathe for like 30 seconds. I started to hyperventilate just a little bit because I was so in shock about the idea that he did it. Because once he has snapped that finger, it's over. Right? You're right, of course, Chocolate Rob, but you get my point. Let's talk about everyone dying. Now, Mr. Mixelplix. I don't even know if that's how you're supposed to pronounce that. I've heard it said that way several times. In a lot of people died. I forget the exact list. Let's see. Loki, Heimdall, Gamora, Collector. I feel like there's someone else who died before the snap. Help me out, guys. Who else died before the snap? I noticed that too, Puzzle Fury. Vision. Vision. Who technically died twice. So, these 5 people died on camera. Then, like 14 named characters. There's a list, but there's like 14 named characters. There are 2 very distinct categories of deaths in this film. And I've noticed a lot of fandom has been arguing which of these will be undone. I want to talk about that for a second, if I may. And I love reading chat, but for just a second, I just want to get these thoughts out, so please bear with me. Comics have such a common thing about people coming back from the dead that it's a trope beyond cliche. People who don't read comics know about how comic book characters come back from the dead. It's commonplace to the point of stupid, right? So people coming back from the dead, everything I just mentioned just now was that which of these come back from the dead? That's all the discussion has been about. Who is coming back and how? Because it is so commonplace. And the film did build into it a way to bring back this group of people. The people who got... Because what's the thing that Thanos sees when he snaps his finger? A vast orange plain. How many of you know what the soul world is? Yeah, I know a lot of you know what I'm talking about. I know a lot of you know what I'm talking about. Now, here's the interesting thing. The only one we saw in the Soul World, assuming that is what that was Gamora. No one else. Now, that makes sense. That would explain perfectly why Gamora, the one sacrificed for the Soul Stone, was there. The Soul World is basically what is inside the Soul Stone. Soul Stone kills someone, they go into the Soul Stone. It's actually very simple. So Gamora being in there makes perfect sense. The most predominant theory I hear is that all the people whisked away are going to go into there. All you have to do is get them out. Now, that's not as easy as said and done, and it's worth noting the comics do not necessarily have an impact on the movies. The MCU really is its own thing. It takes inspiration from the comics, but it doesn't follow the same rules. I mean, I think this is well established by now. So this is not necessarily a way for this to work out. But the fact that they bothered to show Gamora in the orange plane... The other theory that's been tossed around is that they're going to pick and choose who comes back by some other method. Or that they're going to bring back, like Loki and Heimdall and Gamora because they are popular characters, and that's pretty much the reasoning. And real life does have to be considered here. We can't just look at this purely creatively, because pure creativity doesn't actually exist. We have to consider the financial side of making movies and making money. I like that scene too, by the way. Did you find what you needed? What did you have to give for it? Would you like to hear my theory? I mentioned I wanted to share this on Discord, and I've been saving up for this, because I do actually have a theory that will not happen. I would bet money against me. But if I was in charge, this is what I would do to make this happen. We know full tilt that there is a new Spider-Man movie. They're already doing pre-production on it. There's a Guardians of the Galaxy 3. They're already doing pre-production on that. And there's a Black Panther 2, which they haven't quite started doing pre-production of, but Saldir, of course, gets there before I do. I would leave everyone who died dead. I would not bring back any of them. But these 3 films can still be done because Okoye is still there for Black Panther. Miles is still there for Spider-Man, and Rocket is still there for Guardians. They've already teased Miles. And Okoye was the one to watch him die. And Rocket could build a new crew. They've already got tons of other people in the Guardians thing, forming a new Guardians group, or working with Sylvester Stallone's group. I forget their names, forgive me. Oh, it's not going to happen. I would vote against me too. But this is a method by which we can satisfy real-life need for money and function. Oh yeah, Nebula. Nebula could go with Rocket as well. We could still satisfy the real-life need for funding these things and satisfy the creative need for making these deaths matter. I don't want it either. I don't want Loki gone. Loki finally started growing as a character. Took him 3 movies. I don't want Loki gone. I don't want Peter gone. I don't want Peter gone. But no, in reality land, they'll just... and everyone will come back to the dead and it'll ruin the film. And now I'm going to point out the same thing that everyone else pointed out. 5 of the original Avengers survived the snap. The only reason I say 5 instead of 6 is because we don't know what's going on with Hawkeye. But this, to me, is the other big surprise of the film. You guys know me. I tend to look at things from a financial perspective. That's just my mindset. I all of life, all of society can be broken down into economic terms. Terms of social contracts, of trade, of interaction, of resources, of efficiency. All of these concepts apply to every level of life. So that's just the way my mind tends to work. But that's actually not true, Max Time. I hate to contradict you, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But economically speaking, killing those 5 people was the most likely thing to happen in this film. These people have been paid. So, for those of you not aware, if you're in a film, and then you're in another film, and then you're in another film, you make more money each time. That's why I'm doing this. This has to happen. This is the rules of the Screen Actors Guild, the SAG. It's unavoidable. And those contracts, most of those contracts actually ended a couple movies ago, and they've been basically consultanted in, as I like to call it, each time. So these people, financially speaking, are the most difficult people to keep around. These people are the most complex and financially unstable people to keep around, ignoring the fact that the actors kind of want to move on in several cases, and ignoring the fact that they're costing lots of money, and yet they're the ones who lived. And as Freckles points out, the final 3 contracts are up next film. And this is actually the second... the second time Robert Downey Jr.'s contract has been extended. Do you know what it takes to extend a long-term film contract with an A-list actor? But they kept all 5 alive. And probably Hawkeye. Let's talk about Hawkeye really, really quick. So Hawkeye has been doing something and filming something. He, as was mentioned, he actually injured himself. I'm not willing to take that 100% as read, because we know they were filming 3 films more or less simultaneously and doing a lot of cutback. The directors have actually talked about this, the scenes where they would do this scene from this film and then this scene from this film and so forth and so on. The odds of Hawkeye being in Captain Marvel are actually pretty high at this point, even though he hasn't been announced for it. I mean, they're bringing Burton back, for God's sakes. But more to the point, getting more to my point. One of the things that I find interesting is that they have flat out lied about this film several times. Like, did you notice that? In a lot of the interviews and a lot of the information that was released leading up to Infinity War, there were just blatant, straight lies, which were intended for obvious misdirection, to try and make people so they don't actually know what's going on or what's going to happen. Now again, Hawkeye probably is in Avengers 4. Let's just go ahead and say that. That is very likely to be true. But I am less willing to say that Hawkeye survived Infinity War, if you see where I'm coming from this. So, yeah, explicitly lied about Thanos' backstory, about Hawkeye being in it, and Ant-Man in it. I had a list at one point, I don't have it in front of me right now. That's true, there was also shots in the trailer which were not in the film. And in fact, I'm sure you noticed, even though some of the lines in the film lined up with lines in the trailer, they were said in different scenes, in different context, and it's clearly a different recording. Yeah, Captain Marvel is, by all accounts, this is still not 100% confirmed, by the way, but by all accounts, Captain Marvel is set in the 90s. That's like 95% confirmed at this point. Yep, there were also, Hulk was running in with the army in Wakanda, along with several other of them. That was a scene they made for the trailer. I can't believe they actually did that, but I like it when films do that, actually. Anyways, so I don't know what to think about him. So anyways, yeah, so that's my theory on the coming back. Obviously, as weird as this may sound, it will probably be easier from an in-story sequence to bring up the people who got snapped than the people who didn't. Which means, theoretically speaking, Loki, Gamora, Vision, and Heimdall are actually dead, along with the dwarves. At least 1/3? I'm not sure, K-Pen. It depends on what direction... Oh, and Meek. It depends on which direction they want to go with things. Wait, did Meek die? Yeah, Meek died, I think. Pretty sure Meek died. Um, because there's two ways for them to go with this. They could retire them, or they can kill them. Which of these you go for? From a real-life perspective, retiring someone or killing someone basically means the same thing. They're not in the movies anymore. They might be referenced in the background. You know, their character still has a reverberating effect on future films, but for the most part, they are gone. The actor is gone, and they're no longer part of it. So, right? But the actual writers then have to make the decision, do we want to kill them or retire them? And both of those are very, very, very different directions. Retired can also still make a cameo appearance. That is true. Retired can still show up in a post-credit scene for something that took like 10 minutes to film. I do not want them... That's a complicated question, Malachor. I was in the middle of talking about that when you showed up, so I know you didn't hear it. All I'm going to say is that if I was writing this, I would not bring them back. And that hurts. I mean, all of the deaths hurt, to some extent or another. All of them. But watching Peter die, I hate to keep referring to that one. The one guy who basically knew it was coming, who felt it coming, that hurt. But as a writer, I would keep it. I wouldn't bring them back. As I said before, there are ways to satisfy the real-life financial concerns and keeping them dead. Loki could have been an illusion. In fact, to be 100% blunt, I assumed it was an illusion of Loki the entire time. I was actually a little bit weirded out that Loki never revealed it was an illusion after the fact. Admittedly, Gamora coming back is arguably the easiest one to come back. She's in the stone. Like, we don't know that 100%, but it's a very likely thing. She's in the stone. So. See, that's actually funny you say that, Seabear. I have since kind of changed my mind on that, but I have to admit, I do like the idea of basically ending the MCU timeline here. On A New Sunrise. God damn. And I mean that sincerely. Have the story end basically here. Thanos is won. Half the universe is dead. You can keep the MCU going. You just don't go past this line in the timeline. This isn't that unusual a concept, really. There's plenty of other stories to be told in the MCU. In fact, I think it's telling that, you know, again, with high certainty, the next two films are happening before this one. I'd say high certainty, K-Pen. We have no real proof of that, because they didn't fade away until well after until we, the viewers, saw inside the Soul Stone, what we assume is inside the Soul Stone. And so, we have no idea if anybody else joined Gamora in there. Oh, I'm sure, Darkstar. In fact, I hate to point this out, but you realize... I don't want to get into a multiverse thing. I hate multiverses. They have set the stage for the resurrection almost perfectly. Because they pretty much have a built-in window with the orange, with the Soul World, to bring the people back who were snapped. And they almost have set the stage perfectly for the original 5 or 6, probably 6, but, you know, the original Avengers, to, in the next film, lay down their lives to save all the new people, to bring them back, or to swap with them, or whatever. You know, like was said in chat by Darkstar. They use Chkung, they die, the people are released from the stone, that kind of a thing. They have set this stage almost perfectly for the original Avengers to save half the universe. Yeah, no kidding, Melikor. I also have to admit that scene had some impact on me. How many did you see where we won? Or how many did you see when we beat Thanos? 1. It's also incredibly likely, to the point of, I'd say, 99% certain, that Strange is planning for something. There's no way that's not true. That was broadcast too obviously and too blatantly for that to be anything other than what it is exactly what it says on the tin. Because I was expecting that too, actually, Volcanto. I didn't expect him to say 1. Because Strange is not the most sentimental person. That was pretty well established in his film. And he flat out tells them, I will let you and the boy die to save the stone. This is just duh. And I'm sure it was the frost giant thing, chocolate robe. That's just my assumption, though. And then he deliberately doesn't use the stone, even though he could have several times. Well, okay. He sees into the future, and then he doesn't use the stone. In fact, he doesn't even go full tilt. He doesn't even... Strange can do more than what he did in that fight with Thanos. And he actually did that in this film, I might add. And then, just to save Stark's life, he gives up the stone willingly and with no tricks. And then when he dies, this was the only way. Yeah, there's no way in hell he didn't plan this. The only question is, what is the plan? Now again, I hate myself for this, but the 6 laying down their lives to bring down the half does make sense and would fit in perfectly with this. That's how they beat Thanos, right? Yeah, everyone agrees Strange saw Stark was needed. Some people have argued that Strange saw that half the people needed to die. Now, I'm not sure I quite believe that, but the argument is that Strange is a very pragmatic person, and that Strange looked into the future and saw basically that Thanos was right, and therefore kind of let him do it. And also, that's true. I should mention the endgame thing. For those of you who've never played chess, when you trade one figure from another figure to end the game, that is actually referred to as endgame in a chess match. And he flat out says, we're in the endgame now, towards the end there. Also, I want to give credit to Benedict Cumberbatch. He is an excellent actor. You could see the tension in Strange pretty much in all of his final scenes. Just, he's just gritting his jaw just a little bit, and you could just see how he's clipping out his words. This is a man who is, walking a tightrope. He did a good job of that. You could almost tell, this, I'm not even sure if this is the right thing, but this is what we got. This was the only way, And that's also an interpretation I've heard Seabear, that we had to let him, win in order to win. He had to get this one right. Yeah, no kidding, Leander. Let's talk about the Hulk. What is the most primal emotion that exists? This can be argued, but I'm curious what your answer is. Come on, let me see some emotes. I know some of you are my subs. This can be argued. There are 3 emotions that usually are argued for this. But y'all are answering what I would answer. The most primal emotion is fear. Now, this is my opinion, but if you boil it down to pure biology, fear is one of the most fundamental aspects of consciousness. Animals have fear, bugs can have fear. And damn it, Casual. Yeah, fear is a survival instinct, exactly. We talk a lot about fear in real life because fear isn't just one thing anymore. Fear is actually like 15 other emotions that are all different variations. But base core fear.
Enemy power-up detected.
Excuse me, base core fear. Thank you very, very much, Gavilan, comma. As ever, the fear is very much appreciated. Thank you. The Hulk was afraid. Now, I thought about that for a minute, because this is not the first time Hulk has lost. However, Hulk has never lost a straight-up match with another guy who was bigger and stronger than him like this. You know what I mean? Hulk just came out and was just crushed by Thanos. I mention this because, remember, Hulk is still in the lower end of consciousness. We saw that in Thor 3. We saw that Hulk was still just developing. And exactly, Sergeant Joduck, he has no idea how to deal with fear. He's never really had to process that before. Thanos was just something different. Thanos, he couldn't just beat the crap out of this problem like he can and has everything else in his existence. And I find it wonderfully appropriate that Banner was more courageous than Hulk. I agree, a longer fight would absolutely favor Hulk. A man can only be brave when he's afraid. That's very true. I also kind of like, Banner has this line, look, dude, there's no point in this. This thing's already beaten the Hulk. 2 points. First of all, that's not 100% true. Remember, Hulk was having issues when the Hulkbuster beat him. But 2, the Hulkbuster at the time was being piloted by Stark, arguably, I'd say, tied for the most skilled individual in the entire setting. Stark knows his tech inside and out. Banner was having trouble walking properly. You know? Still, nice tag team there. I hope they do more with Hulk in the future. We know they're going to. Everyone said they're going to. Unless they're lying. They might be lying. I also find it interesting that this is, I believe, in the MCU, the first time Hulk and Banner have talked to each other. That's a distinction of consciousness that hasn't really come up yet, right? Remember when Banner came back in Ragnarok, he was like, "Where am I? What's happened?" He had no memory of the 2 years, right? So this kind of consciousness back and forth is a developing thing, and that really piqued my interest. That's true, the first explicit time. I should be more clear about that. Now, I also mention this, though, because they did something a little more subtle, and I'm curious if you guys agree with me on this. It felt like Bruce was mostly aware of Thanos, partially because of Hulk. Like, remember, Bruce comes back, Banner comes back, and he's like, oh my god, Thanos is coming, he's got this army, he's got this doom. Remember, he was Hulk at the end of Thor 3. And he was Hulk when he went after Thanos. Now, there's a possible chance of him going back to Bruce in the middle there, but my point being, I got the very strong impression that he remembered stuff that Hulk saw, which, again, would be new. So, again, kind of developing there between the two of them. Just my opinion. I don't actually know. I'm just sharing what I thought based on the way it was presented. Yeah, what do you mean, no? Possibly Syldear. It could also be part of Bruce's more acceptance of Banner, or excuse me, Bruce's more acceptance of Hulk and Hulk's more acceptance of Banner. I don't know, but I just hope they keep developing it. Unfortunately, thanks to rights issues, Hulk has been a very undeveloped character in the MCU, which sucks. But anyway, guys, you're embarrassing me in front of the Wizards. There were a lot of funny moments here. Um, can I share one of my favorite scenes in the film? And what's funny is I wanted it to happen. And then it happened. And then it was just so much more satisfying because I wanted it to happen. I don't have anything around here to do it with. But it's the scene where they're like, you know, we need to find him. And he says, Steve Rogers might be able to find him. We're not on speaking terms, blah, blah, blah. What's going on? Look, a lot's happened in the last few years. Stark had the phone on him. Stark had the phone on him. This was not a going into battle scenario. He was out having a walk in the park with Potts. And he had the phone on him. That spoke volumes to me. I'm sorry for getting emotional, but goddamn, that said so much. He just had it right there. Bam. I love that. God damn, I love that. Of course he had the phone on him. I'm sorry, it's just that was... And then, of course, Bruce Banner calls them. Yeah, that was a nice thing, too, Palan. Missoura's on Earth. That was a nice scene. I got a better question. Who is there? I got a better question. Why is Gamora? Yes, there was actually an explanation. Hawkeye basically retired. He was like, nope, I'm with the family. I'm out of this biz. Could be Deacon. And if he's going to call, he needs to have that phone on him. And yeah, Rogers being comfortable and normal in Wakanda, we kind of saw that coming. We knew they took Bucky there, and we knew Bucky was out and about, so they managed to deprogram him. So that wasn't really super surprising. But it also makes perfect sense that of all the places that Rogers could chill, where he's safe from the world who thinks he's a fugitive, it'd be frickin' Wakanda. Quill, are you making your voice deep? No. This is how I always talk, guys. Well, you see why that hit me, Blue Wolf Alex. You can't tell me Stark doesn't care about Rogers. You can't. There has been so much connection emotionally between those two since Avengers. I have proven that as long as I do not move, you will not see me. But you're moving. But I'm moving very slowly. No, I can see you. Damn it. Well, you get what I mean, Max Time. The idea of them staying in Wakanda, it makes... I shouldn't say staying, that's really the wrong word, because they obviously mentioned they were on the move. But the point is, when they went to Wakanda, it wasn't, who's this guy? It wasn't, oh, we haven't seen each other since Civil War. It was, hi, Cap. You know, there's a familiarity there with it. So, in my mind, like, as they're on the run, the we need to chill somewhere for a bit place would be Wakanda. That's just my interpretation of that. Yes, I did notice that. I noticed that Rogers said Earth had lost its best defender because Stark had left. And then Ross was an asshole. I want to slug him. I hope he was one of the ones who were... I hate to say that. We're here to kick names and take ass. This film made me laugh way too many times. Of course, Volcanto. Oh no, Spider-Man was absolutely scared to have a guy pointing a gun at his head. And then pop culture references started happening. By the way, I love how Spider-Man outwitted the telekineticist. Something about that just feels appropriate to me. In my opinion, one of Parker's greatest strengths has always been his adaptability. He can just right on the fly. it's part of that whole reflexes kit of his. So I like the idea that he's the one who can figure out how to take on a guy who has mega telekinetic powers. For a second, I was worried he would survive it, but no, he died. I like how Stark was the one who's like, okay, hang on. Who is your master? What, am I supposed to say Jesus? Yes. Things I would have done differently. God, I'd have to really think about that. I'd really have to think about that. Political landscape of the Earth after the snap. How many of you have studied the fall of Rome? I will admit Vision was weirdly weak in this. See, Vision in the comics is one of the heavies. He's pretty high up. And so I've always kind of assumed Vision was a heavy in the films. But they've never really done much to establish Vision as a heavy in the films, so I'm not really sure. You know? But I will admit, one of my more minor complaints, a complaint, but a minor complaint, was the fact that Vision basically didn't do jack. Oh yeah, several Bartman. It's just hard to think of them. Oh, we're going with our made-up names now. Oh, I have studied the fall of Rome, Preacher, more than once. That's why I use that one as my example. There are other moments in real-life history that were bad. The Black Death, the collapse of the Bronze Age, which was so bad we don't even really know what happened to that one. But I look at Rome and the fall of Rome, and I mentioned that. The reason I mentioned Rome specifically, if I can talk about this for just a second, is because when Rome built up... You see this spinoff? See the title of the stream? Rome built up a infrastructure. And most of that part of the world learned to rely on that infrastructure. And I don't just mean literally the aqueducts. I mean the concepts of society, the concepts of law, the concepts of rules and regulations. There was a system that Rome, probably unintentionally, smashed into the world scene. That system was destroyed effectively. And now the world didn't really know how to cope with that. And the world kind of went, woo, as a result of that. Now, the fall of Rome is actually a huge period of time as Rome breaks up and then breaks down and then this happens and the Visigoths show up. But you get my point. That system cracked in half. And as a consequence, people who were relying on this, people who literally built their everyday lives on that system Rome built, couldn't do it anymore because that system didn't exist anymore. And so everything just kind of... And something eventually did arise from that, but there was a pretty decent chunk of time there which was just a mess. And that is what I think is going to happen here. Killing half the human population? I mean... no, I have not, Seabear. Killing half the human population is obviously bad. Duh. Killing half the human population is obviously going to be a horrible, traumatic thing. But if you take a few steps back from the obvious body count horror and think about the structural horror, think about how many power plants aren't going to be functioning, or at all, if proper. Think about how many politicians are no longer in place. Think about how many military personnel have just vanished. Think about how many individuals who know internet structure, or the whole IPv6 thing, which I'm not sure they have in that world, but you get my point, right? Think about how the trains run. It's not just people. Think about farms, food production. You see where I'm going with this? The economy is going to crash and burn in such a hard way. Yeah, think about emergency. Think about doctors. Think about pharmacists. Think about nurses. I'm not saying that the society will end. Let me phrase this. I'm not just saying that it's going to be the end of people, but it is going to be the end, and I'm going to phrase this very carefully. What we're looking at is the end of civilization as we know it. A phrase that's usually misused. Civilization as we know it has basically ended as of the end of Infinity War. What will come after that, who frickin' knows? You know, we have smashed the Legos. You have smashed the Legos. And now, who knows what we're going to make out of it? Shrug. I'll tell you what I would expect. Battletech. Obviously, not literally mechs walking around, but what is Battletech if not the fall of Rome? And yeah, humans will still be here. That really was Thanos' whole point, to make a better world. Remember what happened on Gamora's world? It's a paradise. Full bellies, you know. Speaking of which, did anybody notice? It was a very subtle point in the background. Yes, SJ. It was a very subtle point in the background. But people, part of Thanos' army, were literally saying, choose a side. Did you hear that? They didn't just split them up arbitrarily. They're basically like, go over there or go over there. You noticed that, right? I just mentioned that because it's a tiny little bit of added characterization for Thanos. Basically, arbitrarily picking. Just pick a side. No knowledge of what the side means. No knowledge of which one we're going to wipe out. Just pick a side. Okay, now we kill all of this half. We're good. Let's move on. I want to know if Shuri's okay. That's what I really want to know. Is Shuri going to be okay? I liked Shuri, damn it. Yeah, Thanos called it balance. Remember what he said, adding to this, about what he tried to imply on Titan. Random lottery. No paying of attention to wealth or position. Just a random lotto of people. Shuri is Black Panther's sister. I want to know if she's still alive, is kind of where I'm going with this. She's one of the MIAs. There are actually quite a few MIAs across the franchise. Yeah, the exact opposite of Hydra. That's a good point. Because I haven't taken over the world yet, Vega Goose. Still working on that. Hi, Detective Rarity. I'm glad you liked it. We've been talking about it for, God, about 2 hours now. I did think that Shuri was a little too condescending to Banner, but whatever. It didn't bother me that much. It just nitpick, you know. It depends if those higher beings exist, Starscream. Because they might not. The only thing we've seen in the films that might actually equate to something higher than Thanos would be the... oh god, I forget what they called them. The Ancients. You know, Ego. And even Ego was debatably not higher, just stronger. And there's a pretty good chance the rest of the Ancients are all gone. I mean, nowhere, right? Celestials, thank you. I mean, we are going to have... Now, see, now that being stated, I want to mention something really quick. One of the things that they've stated, which could be a complete lie, is that the Captain Marvel, will be the strongest person they've ever had. I'm not sure what I think about that. don't mistake me, I'm actually pretty excited about Captain Marvel too, but the idea of Captain Marvel being the strongest one they've had so far is kind of eyebrow-raising to me. It was a crafted item, Aethel. So yes, basically. I did like Stan Lee's cameo. Haven't you ever seen? So that's true. There's also the Watchers, although we don't know anything about the Watchers except that they were in a cameo. So I don't know about the Watchers. They could just be neutral. See, I don't agree with that, Deegan. See you around, Ali. To me, Captain Marvel has always been... God, I don't know. What I would call high-medium tier. In the comics, specifically. You know, let's cover her powers real quick. Durability, strength, beams of doom, energy absorption. It's actually all I know about. I mean... Is that it? Am I missing something? I suppose it's obvious, since Captain Marvel was always intended to be one of their allegories for soups. Sorry, I thought I mentioned flight. Oh, I did too, Corster. Poor Parker. Yeah, the Iron Spider, I really loved what they did with the Iron Spider suit in this one. That was kind of awesome. I mean, I would put her as stronger than... That's actually a tough question. Now I got to think about that. See, Thor in the MCU is pretty damn high tier, especially with the Stormbreaker. And that's part of the reason why I'm kind of like... The idea of Captain Marvel being stronger than Thor with the Stormbreaker is kind of eyebrow-raising to me. I suppose it's possible. I don't know. I could believe her being stronger than MCU Hulk, because as we've discussed, MCU Hulk is strong, but nowhere near to the World Breaker status, let's just put it that way. It could just be another lie. I mean, she could just be another heavy. It's not like we haven't had other heavies before. That would be kind of cool, Chocolate Rob. I suppose... Well, we know he could still use the Space Stone, Seabear, because he teleported away. Other than that, I'm not sure. Good morning, Spirit of Memory. See, the problem is there's too little information to go off of Marvel. She hasn't even been introduced yet. Like, she's not in the franchise yet. So we really don't know what they're doing with her. We know for a fact MCU likes to reinterpret characters. So... Right? I mean... So I have no idea what they're doing with Marvel. I can't begin to keep speculating because I have nothing to speculate on. She's in, and that's what I got. The quest for Thanos. Yeah, the gauntlet being damaged, that's probably a thing. Yeah, Fury calling Marvel in was interesting to me. Yes, her film is coming out in November, I believe, of this year. And yes, Marvel is going to be in it. They're also bringing in Coulson, Fury, and the Accuser and the other guy. I can't remember the other guy. So, don't know. What I find strange, this is going to sound like a weird statement. You remember how they said Thanos will return in Avenger 4? I know this is going to sound really weird, but why? Like, the only reason for Thanos to return is for them to go after him. For Thanos to specifically go, or for them to go and try and get the gauntlet back from him. Because, right? I mean, Thanos is done. He did it. He spent his whole life, and he saw a new sunrise. They imply that Marvel was off-planet, and that Marvel is like the no really. We need to call in someone no really, but there's a lot of holes in that theory, basically because we just don't have information about her. That's why I'm hesitant to speculate on her. We just don't know what the hell's going on. That's funny, Revan. I don't want him to see a happy ending. I've also, funny thing, by the way, I've heard several people interpret Thanos' final expression and body language in different ways. What was your interpretation? In the scene where he sits down and watches the sunrise, what do you think he was feeling in that moment? I know the interview answer to that question, Darkstar, but if you're asking me for the in-character answer, I would imagine it's because he didn't know where all the stones were yet. Thanos didn't start moving until he knew where each stone was, to some extent or another. And you'll notice the moment he did, which was actually before Thor 3, remember, towards the beginning of Thor Ragnarok, he mentions that Thanos has already started marching. Now that he knows where all 6 stones are, or at least has an idea where they are, that's when he starts going out and getting them himself. Yeah, how often do you see a well-intentioned extremist, I believe, is the name of the character concept, as well presented as Thanos? Legit question. Like, I've seen plenty of well-intentioned extremists, but most of them were just kind of... Usually something shades that to the point where they really are horrible in some way or another, or they don't really believe in it, or they're just in it for themselves. But Thanos really did believe in his cause and hated it. And freaking hated it. And yeah, of course everyone's going to bring up Ozymandias for obvious reasons. Not the film Ozymandias. Yeah, what I saw was someone who was grief-stricken and filled with grim satisfaction, by the way. That was how I interpreted it. That could be absurdity. Jonolith Irenicus. Now that's an interesting example. The catalyst. Get out, Taitu. Kidding. Um. Oh, I know. Gamora is just like, man, I've been waiting all this time for you, for the universe to reject you. You should have heard my sister in that scene. She did this little kind of quiet gasp of fighting back tears. Because we all knew it was coming. We all saw what was coming. Oh, sorry. It's Lore Mom who just saw the film, apparently. Sorry, comma. You caught me streaming about it. Yeah, period. I told you it was dark, period. There's a lot of misinformation right now about the next film, comma. But what we do know is it's coming out next year, period. Yeah, that kind of self-hatred. Whoops. Why was Lorsis angry? I don't understand that question. She was angry because people she cared about died. Yeah, by the way, we gotta wait a year. The original 5 do, the one. And that's about it that we know about. Their cast listing has been deliberately deceiving. They kind of did that with this film, too, actually. They basically list everyone, despite who was actually in it. Well, like I said, Bartman, if I was writing this, I would basically chop off the MCU timeline-wise here and set future stories before this. Maybe at most have stories deal with some of the fallout of this. You know, kind of a post-apocalypse kind of a scenario. But so yeah, unfortunately, given how much misinformation is going around about these movies right now, I can't tell you definitively what's going on. By accounts, they filmed back to back and also side by side. I know that sounds weird. The original intention was to film everything as one film, like they did with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They filmed the whole film in one chunk. And for those of you who don't know how filmmaking works, that doesn't mean they filmed the first scene and the second scene and the third scene and the fourth scene. It means they filmed the 18th scene, the 7th scene, the 37th scene, the 6th scene, the first scene, the 87th scene. You know, they don't film in the order that they happen in the film. They film in order of production. How you can set up things, you know, is it easier to set up this set, and how many scenes is this set going to be needed for, etc. So, and yeah, they also film by location, which usually has nothing to do with the actual flow of the film. So, the fact that they're doing a side-by-side thing for this is actually kind of unusual, although we do know they also did some simultaneous stuff as if it was the still thing, so whatever. But yeah, I would put, if you asked me to give my guess, I would put an extremely high certainty that Avengers 4, whatever they're going to call it, we don't even have a name yet, is in post right now, is in post-production right now. Of course, Taitu. It's going to take him a while, though, because he got blown everywhere. I mean, have you heard about sand? So... Oh, God, that's terrible, Bregman. I'm sorry. Avengers 4, the high ground. Avenge harder. I like it. Now, can I give my opinion on one thing really quick? Obviously, they're not going to do my theory. Duh. I already said I would vote against myself. I would bet against myself. But if I were them and not doing what I would do, what I would do is I would bring the stakes down for the next film. The stakes were already really, really high, and well presented as really, really high. I haven't finished the fact page yet, Seabar. I have only so much time in my life to do things. I would bring the stakes down. I would bring things more, you know, rather than try to up it again. And then Galactus shows up! No, I would not try to pull a massive climactic doom thing with Avengers 4, my opinion. Yet, trillions, Aethel. Trillions. Or more. We don't know how big the universe is in the MCU. Not really. We know there's a galactic community, and that's about all we know. We don't even know if it goes beyond the Milky Way. Not really. We know there's other dimensions, thanks to Strange. And some acid. But yeah, exactly. You've peaked. I hate to repeat the Empire Strikes Back thing, but Empire Strikes Back peaked early, if you remember. And then it brought it down to be about the character and the personal dynamic. What I think they should do is really bring this... You're invited to my wedding. I think they should really, really zoom the camera in on the original 5. That's my opinion. They left them alive. Do something with it. especially the big two. Really, really, really hit Rogers and Stark. Oh, yeah. By the way, can I also share one other thing really quick here? I love that Rogers was very Rogers in this film. If you think about it, he made the wrong call. Like, you thought about that, right? If they had just destroyed the Mind Stone relatively early, there's actually a pretty decent chance that this would have just been the end of it. He couldn't have undone it that far, right? But Rogers is not known for making the correct call. That's not what he's about. Rogers is known about making the right call, not the correct one. And that's been a consistent aspect of his character. It is basically his biggest flaw. And I love that that didn't work out, as horrible as that sounds. So, um, yeah, he lays on the wire instead of cutting it. Exactly. I talked about that in the Avengers video. I mean, theoretically backfile, but who knows? Star-Lord. Poor Quill. It's also kind of funny to me that Wanda was actually allowed to stretch a couple times. I mean, Scarlet Witch is stupid levels of strong in the comics. No more mutants? I mean, come on. But, yeah. I did like that she was able to stretch and just... She is what I would refer to as a destroyer, not a warrior. Goober. I like it. Hang on, I think I missed a question further up. Chat is moving even faster than I can keep up with right now. Oh, it was De Gaulle. What do you disagree about? Empire, if you don't mind my asking. Yeah, where was she earlier? Could we just... Yeah, whatever. I also found it funny. It's a very minor point, but I like that T'Challa actually used tactics. I mean, it's really, really minor tactics, but he did actually use tactics in the situation. It also made sense to me that they could basically overwhelm the shield with just sufficient force, because that's how force fields generally work. You are producing X power. If X plus 1 power gets through, then 1 gets through, right? I mean, that's just the general way that that works. So it was logical to me that just enough sufficient mashes of la 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 could be able to push through, and that he would then try to funnel them in. I mean, it's very basic stuff, but it was nice stuff, and I kind of like that. Well, it did reinvent Star Wars. I'll give you that, De Gaulle. I'm not sure I would agree with it being a bad thing, but that's my opinion, not a statement of fact. I also liked how War Machine was also a destroyer, not a warrior, by the way. He did a lot of mass damage against those armies, and it was kinda awesome. I also like that too, Deacon. I mean, they were so obviously waiting for Wanda to leave Vision. It's kind of funny. And yeah, I noticed that, Dream Whisperer. Yeah, Rhodey survived, didn't he? Hmm. I mean, knowing Ross chocolate, I wouldn't even be surprised by that. I mean, probably Spirit. Oh yeah, I loved the fact that Cap and T'Challa both just sprinted ahead of the rest of the army. That was awesome. I agree with that. Thor manages to do both warrior and destroyer simultaneously. I did notice that Vision never healed. I was expecting Rhodey to fade too, but I'm pretty sure he survived. I could pull up a list. Hang on. This wouldn't even be hard. Let's make an official list of this, shall we? Here we go. Okay, so... Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so people who were disintegrated. T'Challa, Parker, Strange, Bucky, Wilson, stop. Stupid ads. Wanda. All of the Guardians except for Rocket, Fury, Maria, and I guess that's it. Rocket, Nebula, Okoye, M'Baku, Rhodey, and the Avengers survived. No idea what's going on with Shuri, Pops, Hawkeye, Collector, probably dead. Ant-Man, I guess we'll find out in a couple months. Valkyrie, Wong, and Ned. Those are the ones who are MIA at the moment. No, I noticed that too, Max Time. It's just... I think they specifically did that because otherwise Vision... I don't know, I feel like he would be too high tier, I guess. I don't know. I mean, that would make sense to me, Deacon, honestly. Have M'Baku be the actual new king, temporarily. Have Okoye be the new Black Panther. Or at least the one in the suit. I don't know the Big O. I like to think that when he did that he basically just left it up to chance. Like, he basically said, alright, universe, kill half the people in it, and then walked away. That's just my impression. I don't actually know if that's true or not. She can have the suit, though, Spirit of Memory. She may not have the super strength and speed and agility, but she can have the tech. It's not like Batman has anything empowering him, right? Yeah, roll d20, exactly. So, yeah, it did feel kind of random to me. The only thing that was weird is I really, really, really was surprised that the original 5 lived. I really was. Yeah, and I noticed there's something else that wasn't really answered properly. Thanos respecting Stark makes perfect sense to me. Of course he does. But Thanos also had a throwaway line during the battle. You know, Stark's like, of course I know who you are. You're not the only one cursed with knowledge. What do you think that meant? I'm a little surprised they killed Fury. Killing Maria Hill makes a degree of sense, but killing Fury off? Wow. Oh, absolutely not, Palayan. I have zero doubt that the writers planned out each death. Yeah, Thanos also recognized Stark on sight. That's another thing. I feel like that's one of the very few dangling threads in this film to be carried forward into the future. We've got Captain Marvel, duh, and that line, and I suppose whatever's going on with the Soul World. And I think that's actually about it. Oh, and Strange's Plan. You're right. Sorry. Strange's Plan. Sorry. It was such an obvious one. I forgot about it. But yes, Strange's Plan is another one. Just off camera, Detective Rarity. Yes, I did hear that, Fallout Bear, and it makes sense to me. I noticed that, Deacon. Thanos could have crushed Rogers. I mean, Rogers is strong, but he's not Hulk or Thor levels of strong. Rogers' greatest strength is in his skill and his connection, his leadership qualities. Um, in a one-on-one fight, Thanos would crush him like a bug. Instead, he just tosses him aside. Hmm. Could be so there. I don't know. I don't know. It was one of the few things that really caught my attention. Yeah, but he doesn't. He was more vicious to the other people in his way, Deacon, in my opinion. I mean, what he did to War Machine made me cringe a little bit, you know? By contrast, he just plonk to Rogers. Just. Oh, jeez. Several, preacher. I suppose because it wasn't really his goal, Darkstar. Hmm. Yeah, we have brought that up, Beliskner. I don't know. I can't say a movie I've only seen once is the best movie in a franchise, especially since I've seen several of these films several times. I've even done a rumination on 5 of them. Did I tear up at any point? Oh yes. Not ashamed to admit that one. Because it looks cool, Seabear. I don't really think I have anything else to say on this one. Let's see. I will say, to compare this to Star Trek for a moment, this film felt a little bit more like Star Trek 6 to me. To explain what I mean, Star Trek 6, for those of you who haven't seen it, I won't spoil, but it's a very dark film. And it's a film that wouldn't work if not for Star Trek the original series, Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, Star Trek 4. You know, there was build up to 6. It's pretty much the only time Star Trek has really done that. Um, and Undiscovered Country 6 was a very big payoff of that build up. I have no idea, Bartman. And no, I have not, Barak. I haven't gotten back into that franchise like at all since the rumination I did a couple years ago at this point. Star Trek what? Sorry? There was a 5th film? I suppose because... I don't know how to go. I suppose because they wanted things to be more... One of the things they always stated back when they were starting the MCU, I think I've talked about this in the Ruminations, was they wanted things to feel more believable and less fantastical. So they started low, and they brought everything down several pegs from the comics. So I suppose that's why we like Kirby. You know, I actually heard the strange mirror dimension question earlier. I thought, maybe this is just me, but first of all, 2 points of this. By that point, he already had the Reality Stone and the Space Stone. So I don't think the mirror dimension would have really kept him. Second of all, he did throw the mirror dimension like wave at him, and Thanos just, stopped it with the gauntlet. So that is true, preacher. I'll agree with that. So dark. I'm looking forward to Deadpool 2, consequently. I'm also looking forward to Solo for like the first time, because the way they presented Lando Calrissian is kind of awesome. They had a whole thing in the pre lead up to Infinity War where Donald Glover was giving a tour of the Millennium Falcon, and it was kind of awesome. Yes, make no mistake, I am legitimately satisfied with this film. The next film is something I may have to headcanon away. We'll see what they do with it. Oh yeah, absolutely. The Mage Duel was great. I actually remember thinking, Mage Duel! when it was happening. And yeah, Iron Man has been going up in power tier the whole time. Which makes sense. It's tech. Oh, that would be interesting. Thanos with 3 of the stones, or 4 of the stones, I forgot how many at that point, versus Dormammu. I come to bargain. Anyways. Oh, I'm just... We'll see, Max Time. We'll see. I gotta wait a year, and a year's a long damn time for me. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say. I am interested in Venom. I'm not sure if I'm going to go see it or not. A lot of good visual style, obviously. Yeah, Meteor. Seeing Meteor in the film. I was hoping he was going to bring down the whole moon, actually. That would have been much more terrifying. Let's see, what else? There was a lot of great visual stuff I'm just kind of skipping over. Excellent visual direction, excellent visual presentation for the most part. There were some exceptions to that. Rewatching? Well, I have no plans to rewatch it in the theaters, so the next time I see Infinity Wars will probably be in about a year, when someone asks me to ruminate on it next year. And it'll be out on Blu-ray. I'm just running through the film in my head really quick. Don't think I really missed anything, other than the hundreds of little moments. More Max Time. I don't have anything to say about Peter Dinklage's character. He's a dwarf. He obviously was planned for this. He's arguably most responsible for killing half the universe. Way to go, Dinklage. It would be very difficult for me to name a favorite MCU movie. That's such a battle for first place for me. That's very, very... I'm not even sure I could do that, you know? I have told they do fry kebabs in Scotland. I'm not sure. I'm not from Scotland. Never been. When I take over the world, I'll go visit Scotland. Yeah, Quill... Yeah. I suppose we could also blame Gamora if we wanted to. We could blame a lot of people. You're gonna... I did like how they retained the unique tone of Thor from Thor 3. The person who is grim, but also has that edge of levity that helps him get through things. It'll kill you, only if I die. Yes, that's what killing you means. I don't know what you're referring to, Sile dear. So I don't know. I suppose is my answer. I think that's about all I got. I'm going to go ahead and chop this off here. Actually, one last thing. Cyber Sage mentioned something which I find interesting. Several people, with regards to this film, didn't have the will to do what was necessary until like the last minute. And I think that's one of the reasons why Thanos was succeeded, because he had the will to do what was necessary pretty much the whole time. If they had taken out Vision Stone earlier, might have won. If he had just killed Gamora on the spot rather than when they confronted Thanos, you know, he would have never found the Soul Stone. Or at least he would have been delayed excessively in finding the Soul Stone. If Dinklage had the will to not surrender to Thanos, he would have never had the Infinity Gauntlet. There's others. The only person... Well, there's a couple people who had the will to make sacrifices. Wanda took too long to have the will to make that sacrifice. And Strange had the will to give up this Time Stone for whatever long time thing he's going to do. No, that's pretty much what he says, Saldir. If Gamora didn't care about Nebula, that's another one. But anyways, yeah, I'm going to go get lunch, and then I'm going to play Battletech.